Relating graphs to events. Graphs are used to show the relationship between two variables. And we have three necessary things that we need to be able to do with graphs in this unit. Interpret graphs, sketch a graph given a story, and analyze the graphs that we are given. Interpreting graphs. So this is when we are given a graph and we're given a story and we interpret the different parts of the graphs depending on the story. So it says a student walks and takes the bus to get from school to home each day. Describe what the graph shows by labeling each part. So we first see that we are comparing our total distance that the student traveled to the amount of time it took to travel. Well, we have a steady increase, we have a flat line, we have a steeper increase, and then we kind of level off and aren't as steep. Well, we know that she first is walking because it's at a steady pace, but it takes some time. The flat line represents waiting for the bus because any flat line represents that there is no distance being traveled, but this time continues as you wait, but the distance did not increase. They're not moving. Then we see a sharper increase. Well, this represents riding the bus because riding a bus you can get a lot farther in a shorter amount of time than walking. So you're going to have a steeper line for where you're riding the bus because the total distance increased faster over time than walking does. Then the more shallow line is her walking from the bus stop home because it's still increasing her total distance that she's traveled, but it took a little more time than what the riding the bus would be. Alright, now you have sketching a graph. Sketching a graph is when you're given a story and you just draw and sketch the general idea of what the story is talking about. So it says a plane is flying from New York to London. Sketch a graph of the plane's altitude, so that's how far in the air it is from the ground, during the flight. Label each section. So we have our altitude over time. And we know that we're going to start on the ground on the plane, and we're going to slowly increase and then sharply get to that high point from takeoff. You slowly go up, and then you're getting higher and higher from the ground. But once you get the pilot gets to a certain altitude, that's where you're cruising. So then you level off. So this would be our cruising altitude. We're at the highest that we need to, and now we're just traveling to our distance. Now when we get closer to our destination, which would be London, we're going to make a sharp descend. That's because we're getting closer to the ground. Now we might have to, in most of the time, you have to circle around the airport so that you get to the correct runway. So we'll kind of slow down. And then we make our last descend to our landing in London. Analyzing graphs is when you're given graphs and you need to decide what they could represent. So we have a car travels at a steady speed. Steady speed, so that means that you're going the same speed the whole time. Which graph could you use to show the speed of the car? And which graph could you represent the distance traveled? Explain. So you have this one, which is a straight line. So it's at the same point over a period of time. And then you have this one that is increasing as time goes on. Now, graph 1 is going to show the speed because as time continues, it's steady. That speed does not change, which in our story, it told us it was a steady speed, which is the same through the whole thing. Graph 2 would be more likely to represent distance because even though, yes, we're going at a steady speed, our total distance is still going to increase the longer we travel. So it's going to increase steadily at the same rate, but the longer we travel, the farther we've gone.